Tomorrow morning, an alarm will go off in your house, and you will obey it. You won't call it that, you'll call it getting up. But watch what actually happens. A sound decides when your sleep ends. A calendar decides which days belong to you. A number decides when your childhood is over. And another when your working life is done. You never agreed to any of this. Nobody asked you. There was no meeting, no vote, no signature. And yet you follow these rules every day of your life, more faithfully than any law. Here's the strange part. Laws are written down. You can read them. You can fight them. These rules aren't written anywhere. They live somewhere much harder to reach, inside the word normal. That word wasn't born. It was built, piece by piece, century by century. And the first piece was a machine that taught the world to live by the clock. For most of human history, daily life was not organized by the minute. A farmer did not begin work because a number appeared on a clock. Work began when there was enough light to see. It changed with weather, harvests, and seasons. Time existed, of course, but it was experienced more than it was managed. Then machines changed the rhythm of human life. During the Industrial Revolution, factories brought hundreds of people under one roof. Production now depended on everyone arriving together. A machine could not adapt to your morning. You had to adapt to the machine. The clock stopped being a tool that described the day and became a system that commanded it. Whistles marked the beginning of shifts. Bells divided work from rest. Punch cards transformed minutes into evidence. For the first time, being late was not merely inconvenient, it could interrupt an entire line of production. Soon, the factory's logic escaped the factory. Schools organized children into age groups. Desks faced forward. Bells divided knowledge into fixed periods. Students learned to arrive on time, wait for permission, and move when instructed. The system taught reading and mathematics, but it also taught synchronization. The industrial world did not only need educated people, it needed people who could live by the clock. Railways made the problem even larger. When towns kept their own local time, noon arrived whenever the sun reached its highest point. That worked until fast trains began connecting places whose clocks disagreed. Schedules demanded standard time. Entire regions synchronized their clocks so that machines, workers, and passengers could move through the same invisible grid. Today, we rarely notice the grid. We simply call it the time. The working week followed a similar path. Long industrial weeks were gradually shortened through pressure from workers, changing laws, and employers who discovered that exhausted people were not always productive people. By the 20th century, the 5-day week became increasingly common. It was a major victory over the old 6- and 7-day rhythms of industrial labor. But a victory can still become a cage when it is treated as the final answer. A schedule designed for factories became the default for offices, schools, and digital work that no longer resembles a factory at all. We inherited the structure, even after the world that created it began to disappear. The factory did not just manufacture products, it manufactured a way of living. And this is the first secret of invisible rules. Most were not designed to control your entire life. They were solutions to specific problems in a specific moment. But once a solution survives long enough, people stop seeing it as a decision. It becomes tradition. Tradition becomes expectation. And expectation becomes something even stronger than law. Imagine entering an elevator where everyone is facing the wrong direction. No sign tells you what to do. Nobody speaks. Yet within seconds, you feel a strange pressure to turn with them. That pressure is older than cities, schools, or money. Human beings survived in groups. For our ancestors, belonging was not a pleasant bonus. It was protection. The group found food, defended territory, and shared knowledge. Rejection could mean exposure, hunger, or death. So the human brain became extremely sensitive to one question: what is everyone else doing? Psychologists call one version of this social proof. When we are uncertain, we use other people as evidence. A busy restaurant appears safer than an empty one. A popular idea appears more credible than a lonely one. A life followed by millions appears less dangerous than a life without a map. Usually, this shortcut helps, but it has a weakness. The crowd can be confidently wrong. In the 1950s, psychologist Solomon Asch showed volunteers a simple line comparison task. The correct answer was obvious, but the other people in the room had secretly been instructed to choose the wrong line. Again and again, ordinary people abandoned what they could plainly see and repeated the group's false answer. Not everyone conformed, but enough did to reveal something uncomfortable. We do not only fear being wrong, we fear being alone. That fear rarely speaks in complete sentences. It appears as hesitation, embarrassment, the feeling that a choice is somehow irresponsible even when no actual rule forbids it. It appears when someone leaves a respected career and hears, "But you are doing so well." When someone does not buy a house and is asked when they will finally settle down. When someone chooses not to have children and is told they will change their mind. When someone rests while everyone else performs exhaustion as a sign of importance. No police arrive, no judge passes sentence. The punishment is social friction. A raised eyebrow can enforce a rule more efficiently than a written command. Because written rules can be challenged. Invisible rules hide inside the people we love. The strongest prison is not built from walls. It is built from expectations you mistake for your own thoughts. This is why invisible rules reproduce without a central authority. Parents teach what their parents taught them. Schools reward what institutions already value. Companies promote people who resemble earlier examples of success. Social media accelerates the process. You no longer compare yourself with one village. You compare yourself with the most polished moments of millions of lives. A certain body becomes normal. A certain home becomes normal. Constant progress becomes normal. And because the images repeat, the expectation begins to feel internal. You call it ambition. But sometimes, ambition is simply conformity wearing expensive clothes. The clearest way to see an invisible rule is to look at one that has already disappeared. For centuries, millions of people lived under monarchies that claimed a sacred right to rule. Kings were not merely political leaders. Their position was presented as part of the natural order. To challenge the king was to challenge the structure of reality itself. Until people did. There were societies in which a person's birth determined nearly every door that would ever open. Social class was not treated as an unfair arrangement. It was treated as destiny. Until it wasn't. There were workplaces where children labored for hours in dangerous conditions. There were countries where women were denied political power by arguments presented as obvious common sense. There were offices, restaurants, and airplanes filled with cigarette smoke because the expectation that others should breathe it was considered normal. There were doctors who appeared in advertisements promoting cigarettes. There were cities designed without access for people with disabilities because their participation had not been treated as a design requirement. There were marriages, careers, and lives restricted by race, class, gender, religion, and sexuality, defended by people who believed they were protecting civilization. Many of these systems did not appear temporary to those living inside them. They appeared permanent. That is what every era gets wrong about itself. We look backward and see customs. We look around and see reality. Every generation mistakes its customs for common sense. The past is not full of uniquely foolish people. It is full of human beings doing exactly what human beings do now, learning the rules of their world, receiving rewards for following them, and finding reasons those rules must exist. That should make us humble. Because future generations will not only study our technology, they will study our blind spots. They may wonder why so many people spent their healthiest decades in work they hated, waiting for permission to live later. Why mental exhaustion was treated as ambition. Why cities were built around machines rather than people. Why food was engineered for constant consumption and illness was treated only after it appeared. Why attention was sold to the highest bidder, even when the buyers designed products to make looking away difficult. Why loneliness increased, while every person carried a device built for connection. Some of today's normal rules will survive. Others will become museum exhibits. The problem is that nobody labels them in advance. By the time most people are old enough to design a design has already been presented to them. Perform well in school, choose a respectable path, earn more each year, buy a home, display progress, retire after decades of being useful. There is nothing inherently wrong with this life. It may be exactly the life you want. The danger begins when a default is mistaken for a decision. Consider the goals you rarely have to explain. If you want a higher salary, people understand. If you want a larger home, people understand. If you want a promotion, people congratulate you. But if you want fewer possessions, less status, more time, slower mornings, or work that sounds unimpressive but feels meaningful, suddenly an explanation is required. Defaults are powerful because they travel without justification. They are the dreams you can borrow without noticing. Modern advertising rarely sells an object alone. It sells the person you might become after buying it. The watch promises importance. The car promises freedom. The phone promises creativity. The house promises arrival. The product is visible. The rule underneath it is not. A successful life should be visible to other people. So people begin optimizing for evidence. A title that sounds successful. A holiday that photographs well. A home that communicates progress. A schedule full enough to prove demand. The life becomes a performance, and the audience is also performing. Everyone is watching everyone else for proof that they are doing it correctly. And because everyone appears certain, almost nobody admits they are improvising. Maybe you do not want the life everyone wants. Maybe you want the safety of wanting what everyone wants. That distinction changes everything, because a borrowed dream can still produce real sacrifice. You can spend years climbing a ladder before realizing it was leaning against someone else's definition of success. You can become excellent at a life you never consciously selected, and the world may reward you for it. That is what makes the trap so difficult to recognize. Failure is not the only way to lose your life. You can also succeed at the wrong thing. Escaping invisible rules does not mean rejecting every tradition, quitting your job, or doing the opposite of everyone around you. Rebellion can be just another form of obedience if the crowd still decides your direction. Freedom begins more quietly. It begins by making the invisible visible. Take one belief you treat as obvious and ask 3 questions. Who taught me this? What problem was this rule originally designed to solve? And does it still serve the life I am trying to build? Why must work happen during these hours? Why must progress always mean more? Why should rest be earned only after exhaustion? Why does a choice need to be permanent before it is taken seriously? Why am I embarrassed by a life that would make me peaceful? A good rule survives examination. A weak rule survives avoidance. Some rules protect people. Some coordinate society. Some preserve hard-earned wisdom. The goal is not to destroy the map. It is to notice that a map is not the territory. You may examine your life and choose the traditional path again, but choosing it after reflection is different from inheriting it unconsciously. One is a decision. The other is momentum. Freedom is not living without rules. Freedom is knowing which rules you have chosen. Somewhere, a child is being born today. At first, the world will be nothing but light, sound, and unfamiliar faces. Then the lessons will begin. The child will learn a language they did not choose. They will learn that some clothes belong to some occasions, that some jobs are impressive, that some mistakes are embarrassing, that Monday feels different from Saturday. They will learn what their world calls success, and because everyone around them agrees, the rules will feel as solid as gravity, just as ours once did. But gravity does not disappear when people stop believing in it. Invisible rules do. They survive because they are repeated. They change because someone notices they can. Every freedom you inherited began with a person who looked at something called normal and saw a decision hiding underneath. The weekend was once unrealistic. Voting rights were once dangerous. Working from anywhere was once impossible. Every new normal begins its life as an unreasonable question. So the question is not whether you live by rules, you always will. The question is whether the rules guiding your limited time were selected with awareness or absorbed in silence. Because one day, your life will look finished from the outside. The job, the home, the achievements, the evidence. And none of it can answer the question only you can answer. Was this actually mine? The most powerful moment in a life is not when you break every rule. It is when you finally see them. Because once a rule becomes visible, it becomes a choice. And once it becomes a choice, your life can begin to belong to you.